Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Mindful of You podcast. This is episode 95, Lessons from Wicked. I'm so excited to chat with you guys about this movie today. I obviously loved it. Seems like many people did, but especially us musical theater folk. They did such a great job at casting amazing singers, storytellers, dancers. Like, the production was off the charts. They didn't overuse CGI, only when they had to use it. It was so good. Made me get a Letterboxd so I could get on Letterboxd and rate it 5 stars. Apparently that's like unheard of. All the people I follow, they never rate stuff 5 stars. Why are we so stingy with the 5 stars? I don't know. Anyway, but I'm going to talk about Lessons from Wicked today. If you're on YouTube, you can see I'm wearing a Wicked sweater. It's very bright and it's pink and green. So I'm representing Elphaba and Glinda. Okay, so lessons from Wicked. I've got 6 lessons and then 2 quotes. So a little bit different. There's probably more I could have pulled out of this, but this is what I came up with. If you haven't seen the movie or the musical, there might be spoilers, but like this musical's been around for a very long time. So, okay, so my first lesson here is probably I should have saved it for last, but it came to my brain first, so we're going to do it first, which is people are not all good or all bad. I think this is like pretty much the overarching message of the movie, because the idea is, when we grew up watching Wizard of Oz, obviously we thought the Wicked Witch was bad. She's the villain. You mean to Dorothy? She's probably portrayed that way. It's been forever since I've seen the movie, but I'm guessing she's portrayed like a pretty nasty lady. So, this prequel is about how she, I guess, became that way, and then some other things that I won't spoil. But so it's interesting to see the contrast of Elphaba and Glinda, and the ways in which Glinda is not good and the ways in which Elphaba is not bad, but how they were basically forced into those 2 camps. There's this really cheesy dramatic show that I really like called Once Upon a Time. It ran on ABC for like 7 seasons. And there's a scene between Snow White and the evil queen. It's pretty similar to the message of this movie where Snow White says, it's not that simple. You're not all good and you're not all bad and I'm definitely not all good. And that really struck me and it kind of carried into this movie. And so it's just interesting to think about that with your life. If you're the type of person who tends to think like that you're bad or that you can't do anything right, etc., that's not true. It can't be all encompassing true. There's definitely some good in you, and vice versa. Some of us are conceited and that's okay. I guess we should work on it, but, you're not all good either. So if you find yourself in the position of judgment or playing holier than thou, self-righteous, you're not all good either. So that space can be a little bit uncomfortable because we've grown up seeing, heroes and villains and good and bad or good and evil. And it's generally just a lot more complicated than that in real world situations. So I really like that about this movie. I'm trying to kind of explain, how they portray it, but they just do it so well. So watch the movie if you haven't. Okay. Lesson number 2, those who seem to have it all still have want. So is that where joy comes from? So this is a question and a lesson rolled into one. Glinda is like the representation of rich privilege, while Elphaba is not. Glinda, when coming to Shiz, the school, she is determined to study sorcery, but Madame Morrible won't take her on as a student. She doesn't think she has what it takes, but she does take Elphaba on as a student to teach her magic and sorcery. And this really makes Glinda sad and jealous and all the things. And then to come in the future, there'll be other things that make her sad and jealous and all the things in part 2. And I won't lie and say like the monetary gain and like the social status, those things do help to an extent, in my opinion, to be happy. Some people might disagree with that, but in my opinion, if you never have to worry about money, that's going to help. Like, a lot of people have to worry about money. If you never have to worry about people not liking you, like, that will probably help too. Like, that's what privilege is, right? And so I'm not going to say it has no impact on our joy and on our happiness, but it's not all of it, right? She's still able to find things that she's not satisfied with, that she's not happy with. And so it just, it's a question to ask yourself, like, what things am I wanting for and what am I not noticing I already have? And also just consider that, the people who maybe seem to have it all probably have insecurities too. Okay, lesson number 3. Doing what we think is right sometimes has ramifications we don't expect. So it's a little bit of a dark message. But, have you ever been caught in that spiral of like, you're trying to do the right thing and like, you just feel like you're always somehow making things worse? Like I know people have run into that with like trying to be more ethical in their, in consuming like clothing and just stuff in general. And they're like, well, I try and shop less at this place, and then turns out that the place I started shopping at more is worse, and Elphaba has a song in the second act that's no good deed goes unpunished. And I don't really know why I included this lesson because it's pretty nuanced and I don't know if it has a positive spin. But I think it's more just important to acknowledge that like it can be frustrating to feel like you can't get it right. But I also don't think that's a reason to stop trying to do the right thing. So take from that lesson what you will. Okay. Number 4, we may have a tendency to turn away from those who are different. So in the movie, they dramatize this. Elphaba's green and people are like freaking out and they're like, you're gross, you're a loser, we hate you because you're green. Like, it's very blatant. She's also weird, like a little bit like out of the ordinary because she grew up green and was like isolated from everyone so she didn't have a normal social upbringing. But she's also really stinking awesome and it's like a social justice warrior and all that fun stuff. But like, I think that people have a tendency, like when movies do something like this, to be like, oh, well, it's not like that in the real world. Like if somebody was green, nobody would care. Or if somebody was green, but they're dramatizing it intentionally. They're taking those little tiny feelings that you have and blowing them up in front of you so that you can be like, oh, like that's crazy. That's wrong. But I also think some people like think like, well, because I'm not that bad, or I'm not, telling her she's dumb or a loser or whatever for being green, then I don't have a problem, And so I would just, invite you to like take a step back and be like, how do I shy away from those who are different? I probably don't call them out like that, but do I cross the street? Do I sit somewhere else at church? Do I, like, how are we doing those things? And it's not necessarily something to actively need to aggressively change, but it's awareness is the first step. And so just being aware that we all tend to have some kind of bias or something towards people who are different is helpful. And movies like this can help open our eyes to that. And just don't get caught in the trap of, oh, well, I'm not that bad, or that's crazy. Like, we're not like that. Yeah. Like, generally speaking, the movie knows that they're intensifying the reactions on purpose so that they're obvious. Okay. Lesson number 5, friendship can be born in unexpected places. So kind of going along with the last lesson, like if we consistently try and just, stick in our pack of those who are the same as us, we might not find those unexpected friendships. And it's really cool too. Like, it's cool to make friends with people like from different walks of life that have a different history than you, different upbringing from you, have current different even value sets than you. Like, some things value-wise, like, may be very important to you, but maybe in the grand scheme of things aren't that important to somebody else. But like, maybe you have other shared values that makes it so you're good. You can still be good friends. And I just don't think we should limit our world to just what we know. And then lesson number 6, don't put a ceiling on what you or others are capable of. So show-stopping number, end of the part 1, end of the first act, defying gravity. Elphaba decides she wants to fly. And there's so much in our lives that this can represent. I go back to the example of like my aerial journey all the time of I never thought I would have strength to be able to do what I do, or flexibility or grace or any of the things. And I'm continuously trying to push up the ceiling. I keep putting over my head and being like, okay, now I've reached it. Now I'm done. And I have to push up and be like, we don't have to be done. But there's so many other things too that we put a ceiling for no reason. I know like when I graduated high school and was like going to college, going on a mission, and the whole world in my head was blowing up because everything was so different than I expected it to be. Things in my head weren't going to plan. My expectations were kind of shattered, and I had to learn, like, just as much as I was kind of seeing my vision of life pass away, that there was so many more options in life. Like, I was really putting a ceiling on what my life could look like. And in one example, like, I always thought I had to do a job that was like super conducive to being a mother. And it's not that I still don't care about having like a work-life balance with my family, my future family, because I do. But I think that I had a very specific idea of what balance looked like, and I didn't realize it could look another way. And so my whole life, I'd been putting a ceiling on what my career could be, who I could be, because of this idea in my head that it had to be, XYZ in order to be able to balance children. And it's going to look different for every person, but I would just challenge you to, challenge your own thoughts. Like, for example, I'm not doing this anymore, but I'd thought about like going into like film and like directing. And I was like, you know what? In some ways that could be conducive to having a family in ways that a typical 9-to-5 wouldn't, like if I'm, on jobs for 2 or 3 months, that's really hard. But then I have, 2 or 3 months of like undevoted attention I can give my family or my children, So it's just different, not necessarily wrong. And so if there's areas in your life where you're putting a ceiling where there doesn't need to be one, I invite you to just push it off. And we also do this to other people. Like, we think that they're not capable, and it's not an active like putting down thing. It's just like, oh, probably not. Like, you probably can't do that. That seems unrealistic. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But that's kind of for them to find out. So, like, they can at least try, Okay, I have 2 quotes from the movie. I don't know if they're also in the musical. The first one is Fiyero saying, "She doesn't give a twig what anyone thinks." He's talking about Elphaba when she's dancing at the party. And she's dancing very differently from how the people at the party were previously dancing, so they think she's weird. And then Glinda says, "Of course she does. She just pretends not to." Oh, yeah. There are so many people out there pretending they don't care what other people think. And so if you're one of those people, or you really care what other people think, it's okay. Like, we all have our moments, some more than others, where we do care what people think. So that maybe that can push us to be a little bit kinder too, because we might think, we can't pierce somebody's armor. Like, oh, they're so confident. Like, they don't care what I think. It doesn't matter if I say something rude or remiss about them. They don't care. Like, and yeah, maybe not, but they could, so it's better to choose kindness. Okay, and then the last quote, "Are people born wicked, or do they have wickedness thrust upon them?" So this is like the question of the movie from the beginning, and we don't know the quote unquote answer yet because we haven't gotten part 2, but this has been something I've been battling like since I've started my master's program, and just in general been challenging my worldview of, You know, how much is agency? How much is the life circumstances we're born into? How much like what's the level? Like how much can our choices impact like our lives? Some people would say 100%. Some people wouldn't. And so it's just interesting to, you know, think about like what parts of our lives are our faults, I guess, and what parts aren't, or what's a combination. I mean, that's always the answer, right? Is like, it depends. It's nuanced. But like, this is super important to me as a therapist, future therapist. Oh, excuse me. This is super important to me as a future therapist because I don't want to misjudge a client that has like more going on than just making bad choices, you know? So this is something I'm continually analyzing in my own life and in the lives of people I interact with. And it's a lot more complex than I initially realized. I'm sure it will only grow more complex as I keep learning. So, okay, that is it. And that is also it for season 2 of the Mindful of You podcast. So this end is a little bit sudden for you guys and for me. I decided to end season 2 here. And I'll be announcing season 3's launch on my Instagram at Mallory Jo Mindfulness. So make sure you're following me there. I don't have a timeline yet. I have gotten super busy with just work, family obligations, aerial silks, grad school. And it felt like I couldn't give this the attention it deserves. And I want to be really intentional about podcasting because there's a ton of podcasts out there and there's a few of you who choose to listen to mine, and I want to make sure it's worth your time. I'm still proud of the work that I did in season 2. And I think that I've grown a lot, and I hope that you guys have too. I really hope that there's a season 3 and that when there is, that we can learn and grow together. But this break is indefinite as of now. So we will reconvene hopefully at some point. But if and when I relaunch for season 3, it will be on my Instagram at Mallory Jo Mindfulness. So just make sure you're following me there. I'm getting a little bit sad, but I will miss you guys. You're incredible. There's so many podcasts. So please find another one that posts Wednesday mornings that you love. Heck, Ghost Runners podcast. They post Mondays and Wednesdays. They're hilarious. It's a different vibe, but laughter is a good medicine. So just keep on keeping on, and you're still, a lot of you are my friends and family. If you ever need anything, you know I'm here, and have an amazing week. Bye-bye.